Monday Night Raw review, December 9th, 2024. So we started the show with probably the most anticipated match of the night, which was the Wyatt Sicks taking on Final Testament and The Miz. And to be honest, this match, for me, kind of fell flat a little bit. And it's not really an issue to do with the actual match itself. I think it's just because, obviously, there's been massive frustration around the Wyatt Sicks not being on PLEs, right? And not being used on PLEs. They've only been used on Raw. To be honest, I understand it from a WWE perspective, but this is a match where I think it would have actually really benefited from being on a PLE, where it has time to breathe and, you know, actually has time to cook, you know? I just think with the interruptions of the ad breaks and it didn't hit the spot, is the way I'll put it. KARRION didn't really get into the match until the end. The Miz did a lot of the heavy lifting and had actually probably the most spots. The Nikki spot was cool. Coloring thing, it's not bad. You know, I know a lot of people have criticised this match because it's the Wyatt Sicks losing and people think that the Wyatt Sicks shouldn't be losing. My counter to that is I am glad that they're not going the supernatural route with them. It was a concern during Nightbird and when we knew this group was coming in, because more of a sports kind of company now. I know it's sports entertainment, but they're trying to make it look as realistic as possible. You know, we're seeing that with the presentation of shows in general, as well as the wrestling, you know. It's a good thing that the Wyatt Sicks are being presented as a group. Like, just people, regular people that have a goal and have reasons and logic, and they can be beat. They're not invincible, you know. That was a lot of the issue with The Fiend, is because the second that you make this character that is kind of supernatural, in fact, well, definitely supernatural, and is kind of invincible, and he's no-selling moves all over the shop, you then do hit a roadblock, because it's like, well, you either full send it and make them unbeatable, kind of like, you know, John Cena was, you know what I mean, just winning all the time and can't really lose, or you have to book it as real as you can and have them lose, hence why we ended up with a Goldberg and Fiend thing. That's why we ended up with a very, very poor ending to Seth against The Fiend in Hell in a Cell. Triple H and WWE to be presenting the Wyatts as a grounded group, like a real group of people. It's a lot better. I think booking-wise it will be a lot easier than having a supernatural being. But for me, I have no issue with the Wyatt Sicks losing, because it just emphasises them being a real group, just regular people. But also, it now means that this feud isn't done. It will probably carry on, and hopefully they get on a PLE, fingers crossed. But I'll be honest, with KARRION pinning Uncle Howdy, it is looking like we're building to Uncle Howdy versus KARRION, which I am here for. That match should cook. Straight after that, we then had a CM Punk interview, which, I'll be honest, wasn't really much of an interview. There was 2 questions, but the first question was about the favour between him and Paul Heyman. He said that it's a personal thing, it's not the right time to speak on it, which is basically what Paul Heyman's already said. He then gets asked about Seth, and he kind of describes that the reason there are issues between him and Seth. Obviously Seth would go on to have his say later on, we'll get to that. But yeah, Punk basically saying that Seth came to him, asked him for training, and for free is the bit that he emphasised, because remember, he's not here to make friends, he's here to make money. So he talks about that, how a young Seth Rollins kind of idolised him, and Seth confirmed that later on. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was much of an interview. I mean, it was good to have Punk on the show. I'm never going to be down on having CM Punk on the show in any capacity. Punk reflected on his complex relationship with Seth, emphasising their history and suggesting Rollins resents living in Punk's shadow, which... does he? He basically also said that, you know, everything Seth has done, I did it before him and better. Seth actually confused me with a line he said. He said that he'd done everything that Punk had done twice, but he hasn't won Money in the Bank twice. That was the first thing that instantly stuck out to me. But anyway, Punk teased future confrontations while discussing his reasons for returning to WWE. I'll be real, I don't know where the discussions for returning to WWE were in that interview, because I don't know if I just missed it or what, but my notes are saying that he discussed that, so yay. I suppose we may as well go into the Seth promo as well. It wasn't straight after. This is in no order, by the way. But yeah, Seth responded to Punk's comments accusing him of returning to WWE for financial reasons. I mean, would you blame him? You know, he tried UFC, that didn't work. You know, he then went to AEW, that's not worked. Nothing to do with him though, I'd argue. I'd argue it's more of a Jack Perry thing, but anyway. So, I mean, yeah. Plus, he probably does feel like it's home. I know he probably would get criticised by some fans, you know, when he came out, and one of the first promos he did, and he was like, oh, I'm home. But then, you know, people like Seth bring up that thing of like, well, okay, you tried to tear this place down for 10 years, and now you're saying it's your home. Well, I mean, yeah, it's where he started, you know? It's where he got his big break, I guess. So, and he was there for a while, so you know. But yeah, like I said, there was one line that really confused me. I mean, I don't know if Seth was just talking about the championships, but he said that he did everything that Punk did twice. But instantly, as he said it, I was like, well, you haven't won Money in the Bank twice, unless I've just missed a cash-in. I don't know. As far as I know, Seth's only won Money in the Bank once. But as far as titles go, probably adds up. But yeah, he then labelled Punk as a fraud, and he actually then got interrupted by Sami Zayn, who basically just came out and apologised for last week, accusing him of attacking Jay. They are really emphasising that Seth and Sami are close. And Zayn actually said something along the lines of, like, this Punk feud is bringing out the worst in you to Seth. And to be honest, it probably is. And it seems like it is, because Seth has been obsessed with Punk since he came back. Obviously, he was world champion at the time, so he was distracted. He was all over the place. As was Punk. He was distracted with Drew. And he was also injured. But, yeah. And then Sami basically saying that, like, it is true. It seems like that anyway, because CM Punk has said that he's not thought about Seth at all. Because, I mean, he's been focused on Drew and then obviously rehabbing and whatever. Yeah, overall, though, a really fun segment. I liked how he went as well, straight from Seth's segment, as Seth walked off after him and Sami made up. Sami Zayn then addressed Drew, and he was talking about how he's going to handle it as quick as possible, you know, so that it doesn't get dragged out. I think maybe a little dig at the Punk Drew thing. Basically, Sami Zayn against Drew McIntyre is now confirmed for Saturday, and I'm here for it. That should be a pretty fun match. We then also had the New Day segment, which, to be honest, I'm quite pleased with, and I'm sure WWE and Triple H are as well, because, wow, the New Day started off backstage. Kathy Kelly asked them a question. They didn't really answer it because heels. But the only thing that's confusing me is, well, why Kofi and Woods are kind of acting like they don't know what they've done, you know, because they've turned on on Big E, sorry. And that's the only bit that's confusing me, because it's like, well, you know, I understand your point, which, by the way, I agree with some of the points New Day made about how Big E, you know, wasn't around, and yeah, he broke his neck, fair enough, but he was on the panels for the pre-shows of PLEs and whatnot. You're telling me he couldn't have just nipped backstage and try and solve this issue, you know? But he didn't. So I kind of agree with it, to be completely honest. But yeah, Woods and Kingston basically find their way out into the ring, and they were going to cut a promo. The crowd said, oh, hell no, and booed him out the building louder than Dirty Dom has ever been booed out of a building. Honestly, the crowd shook them that much that Kofi dropped the mic by accident, and then they just walked off. I mean, chilling. Absolutely chilling. I would say segment of the year. Next was the Women's Intercontinental Championship Tournament match. Lyra Valkyria was the one that ended up getting the win. I know that will annoy a lot of Zelina Vega fans. But the thing that I would say, if there are any Zelina Vega fans watching this, hold tight. Because we've seen it with people like Cody Rhodes, right? We've seen it with people like Kofi Kingston, all right? There's a bigger story that is happening, okay? There is a way bigger story, and it won't happen straight away, but when it finally happens and Zelina Vega gets that Women's Championship or the Intercontinental Championship or the US Championship or whatever, right? once she finally reaches the mountaintop, it'll make that moment so much sweeter. And I know as a fan of Zelina Vega, it's probably not an easy journey to be on right now, but it will happen. Because the way I look at it, it's one of two things that can happen here, right? One is that they're doing a similar thing to what they've done with people like Kofi, Daniel Bryan, and Cody, where they will build them up and, you know, they shouldn't really be in the main event, but they've managed to get there, whatever, you know, and they've been on this long journey and they want to finish their story. I hate that saying now, but, you know, they want to finish that story. They finally get there and they finally do it. And then they're on top of the world and then they can finally progress, you know? So it could just be a thing of like, just wait, you know, and just see where it goes, right? On the flip side, if that doesn't happen and it ends up in a situation where Zelina is running down her contract expires, she leaves WWE, she goes to the Indies or whatever, makes a name for herself, you know, or a bigger name for herself, comes back to WWE and then does it. I can't imagine there is a future where Zelina Vega hasn't at least held one of the mid-card belts, at the very least. And look, I think it is just because WWE like Lyra. Ever since she got called up, I mean, look, they haven't really pushed her yet because I think still finding her feet, you know, but they seem to really like Lyra, so it's not really a surprise. We also had Liv Morgan against Dakota Kai, which, I mean, for the banter. Liv Morgan secured a hard-fought victory, but post-match Chaos saw Damage Control and Pure Fusion Collective clash in a brawl. Obviously, Pure Fusion Collective are the reason that Dakota Kai got injured her most recent time. And to be honest, completely forgot that feud was happening. But yeah, Liv versus Dakota was a bit random, but I guess it made sense by the end of it because obviously it brought Damage Control out to back up Dakota because she was getting attacked after the match by Pure Fusion Collective. So it kind of made sense in the end. And then obviously Liv snuck back in, hit a... What's her thingy called? Oblivion. That's the one. Hit Oblivion on EO. Obviously, those two are going to be fighting this Saturday at Saturday night's main event. It was an alright match. Pretty fun. Wasn't advertised, so nice little surprise. It was alright. We also, as well, got confirmation that Gunther against Finn is no longer a one-on-one match. It is now a triple threat, and Damian Priest is now in the fold, which I'm here for, because quite frankly, Finn has done nothing to deserve a World Championship opportunity in storyline. Outside of storyline, he should have been like 7-time World Champion by now, but here we are. And yeah, I'll be honest, it kind of confused me why Gunther attacked Damian. Like, Damian has had issues with Judgment Day, fair enough. But why did Gunther then... I suppose because it's Gunther, he's meant to be a heel, right? So, he just attacks Priest for pretty much no reason. Like, they've had their issues, they've settled it, you know? Like, I know Priest isn't going to be happy with how that match went down, but, you know, there wasn't really a problem. Like, Gunther seems still rattled by Priest, and I honestly do think that Gunther fears Priest. But yeah, so Priest came down, he then tried to take out Judgment Day 4-on-1. Finn and Priest end up in the ring, and Gunther basically decks them both. But in the end, it is Judgment Day that stand tall. And then it's backstage that we actually find out that it's now a triple threat match, which should be fun. Should be pretty fun. And then we have the main event. Now, the big issue was that by the time we got to the main event, there was only 10 minutes of the show left. Or like 10, 11 minutes, something like that. And it did feel pretty rushed to begin with. You know, they didn't really give Raquel an entrance. I mean, not that anyone's going to be complaining about that. But, you know, Rhea jumps out the ring, charges at Raquel, and actually during the break, Rhea was putting chairs and kendo sticks into the ring and whatnot. Again, just all saving time while they were at commercial. So then when we cut back, Rhea charges at Raquel. They start hot, they end up in the crowd, they brawl for a bit, back in the ring. Rhea ends up getting the win by putting Raquel through a table. Liv tried to run interference, but Io countered that. Rhea Ripley emerged victorious in her first singles match since recovering from an orbital bone injury, asserting her dominance over Raquel. It was an alright match. Again, it probably could have done with a little bit more time, but even still, with the very short time they had, they absolutely cooked. I mean, an Extreme Rules match or No Holds Barred match, you know, same thing. But whichever one it was, honestly, you can't really go wrong, I don't think. But yeah, overall, really fun match. So overall, this episode did have a lot of talking points, and the night featured significant storyline developments, particularly with like CM Punk and Seth. We got a bit of backstory. I really like that. You know, because realistically, with the CM Punk and Seth thing, we didn't really know why Seth didn't like Punk. It seemed to just come out of nowhere. Turns out because he was ghosted. Sounds a bit like a jealous girlfriend or ex-girlfriend, to be honest, but it's fine. And strong matches across the board, and yeah, overall a very fun match. Ratings-wise, I'd probably go a 6 out of 10. I do think, for example, the Final Testament, Uncle Howdy stuff, that did fall flat in terms of the finish for me, and I just think it would have really benefited from being on a PLE. Should have maybe had more time. Women's Intercontinental Championship tournament match was alright. I mean, it was kind of predictable who was going to win, but you never really know. Like, I'll be honest, going into that, you're looking at it and you can kind of deduct and deduce who was going to go through, and I did pick Lyra, so she did go through. Liv against Dakota was fun. The promos were fun. Overall, just a solid show, man. Like, this was not a bad show by any means. Let me know what you think or what you thought of the show in the comments below. And do me a favour, because 80% of you aren't subscribed. So if you could hit that subscribe button, it'd be very much appreciated. Thank you. If you did enjoy this video, hit that like button, and I'll see you in the next one.